and it's just really fun to play around with.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I for some reason I thought it was just like making business cards and things like that, but it's evolved quite a lot since I looked at it sort of 5 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like you can create portfolios now, which is pretty cool. Like a website. Yeah, let me just bring up a quick announcement to get people joining in.
Okay, I need to eat right now.
Eat. Well, I'll just share. Okay, give it a few more minutes. And I'll share my screen. Just trying to see how I can full screen this.
Yeah, I could just share my Canva link. Would that be easier?
Yeah, actually send the Canva link.
Okay, I'll try and do that now. I'll ping it over to you in DMs if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully I've done that right.
I need access. Can you say the one? Can you share when I can view it or edit it?
Oh, is that better?
Let me try now. Yeah, great.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Ideal, lovely. You see my Canva skills now, or lack of them.
Right, Jenna. So you've done a session with us before on SBT token, and you did a quick introduction about yourself before. But we do have a lot of new people here now in Surgence, so let's just do another quick introduction about yourself before go.
Yeah, sure. So I'm JANNER or Steve. I'm one of the co-founders of APDA, which is the Association for Professionals in Digital Assets. So yeah, I've been in the space for about 1.5 years, and over the last 6 months, been trying to build APDA, which is the first professional body for Web3. So I think I've got a slide in a moment explaining what what we're trying to do on the next slide, but yeah, I thought professionalism and ethics. Obviously, the way I'm sort of mentioning, the reason I'm mentioning APDA is because that's sort of what I'm building over there, and just really trying to improve those elements within our space. And yeah, I thought it's a really good topic to speak about. And Surgence is definitely a group and community that I think are here for the right reason and showing professionalism in what they're doing. So yeah, really relevant for the people here as well. So hopefully it's of use. If it's half of use to you as what I found some of the other talks in your community, then I've probably done my job there, because yeah, there's so many good sessions that I've joined in Surgence. So yeah, hopefully this is beneficial to the people listening. But yeah, if you go on to the next slide, I can try and explain what we're trying to do at APDA, and then I can get onto the subject of professionalism and ethics. So yeah, like I said, we're aiming to be the first professional body for the Web3 space, and the way we're going to do that is in enabling our members to verify their professionalism and ethics on chain. So the talk I gave last time was around soulbound tokens and creating a personal identity. So we're looking to utilize soulbound tokens on the blockchain to help verify professionalism on chain. And we'll do that by issuing a soulbound token that we're calling our digital membership card when you complete our induction course. And from then on, you'll be expected to complete a certain amount of training and professional development, and all that will be updated onto your digital membership card. So it'll be like a record of your professionalism and ethics and the events that you've gone to and things like that. And yeah, so that's what we're trying to do. But to do that, we're asking our members to adhere to our code of conduct. So the way I've sort of structured the call today is to sort of go through the principles of our code of conduct, because that's what we've come up with as sort of key elements of being a professional and being ethical in the Web3 space. So I'll go through our 5 key principles. But before I do that, on the next slide, I thought I'd start with just defining what professionalism and ethics is. So if you could go on to the next slide, it should come up with sort of some definitions for professionalism and ethics. And you'll see, hopefully you can sort of see that and read through that at the same time. But I think the important thing I wanted to highlight was some of the points that I've put in bold and underlined in terms of professionalism. So I've sort of highlighted there that you need to meet the standards and expectations of a particular profession or field. Now, at the moment, I don't think we really have any standards in the Web3 space when it comes to professionalism. So it's very difficult to determine whether someone's being professional or not. So as an example, just showing how important it is to look at particular professionalisms. A professional solicitor is going to be a lot different and show different traits than you might expect from a professional sportsman. So I think it just highlights there the importance of the setting that you're in. And obviously Web3 is sort of a new area. So defining what professionalism is in Web3 might be slightly different to you find in other professions. So, and at the moment, I don't think there are any standards that sort of set the standards to what we should be doing in terms of professionalism and how we should be acting. So obviously, before we, are able to define that, we need to understand what the standards are and what we want from the space. And then ethics is, I see it as a bit more obvious in terms of what is and what isn't ethical. It's more sort of morally right and wrong. But then when you think about it in a bit more detail, it is a bit subjective in terms of what is ethical. And I've highlighted at the bottom there, it's what principles, intentions, outcomes, and virtues are valued. So again, it depends on the area you're in. And a good example on that one is, some people may say that eating meat is or isn't ethical. Neither is right or wrong particularly, but it just depends on your personal opinion. And similar to like political spectrum, there might be things that you consider ethical policy. Two people might disagree, but it doesn't necessarily mean one is right or wrong. So it's just important to sort of set the principles for Web3 and what we think is ethical and what we think is professional. So that was just really what I wanted to highlight in that slide. And so things like the standards, they don't necessarily need to be written down. And taking Surgence as an example, there's a certain standard of the community members that I've seen in Surgence, and I don't believe it's been sort of enforced in writing, but it's just something that's sort of been built up as the team has built it, and there's kind of a culture and understanding of what to expect in the Surgence Discord and in your community. So it's not always sort of written down what these standards are, but sometimes it's just the sort of the culture and the expectations of a certain place that sort of creates what those standards are. But at APDA, we have put this code of conduct together. If you go on to the next slide, I've highlighted what those 4 are sort of main principles are in terms of standards in APDA. So we've got 5 key principles that we've put out. And sorry, I've just lost so sorry, I can see the screen now. So we've set out sort of the key ones that we believe are sort of key, and those are the ones I'm going to run through today in order. So there I've included sort of promoting respect and dignity. Conflict of interest is a really key one, particularly in the Web3 space. So where we all hold NFTs and might be sort of tweeting about them and things like that, it's important to understand about conflicts of interest. Obviously, abiding by laws and regulations, maintaining honesty and consistency and integrity. And then the final one is understanding and respecting the culture of Web3. So I think that's one that people potentially might forget about or don't always include when they're thinking about professionalism and ethics. So the next slide, I go into the first of those, which is promoting respect, dignity, and understanding in all your interactions. So this principle had originally been titled "Treat others how you intend to be treated," and it's therefore around about being, a nice and respectful person in all your interactions. And the reason we chose to change this principle is that again, it's a subjective thing. So what one person considers being nice might not be the same as what someone else does. So we therefore made it more specific to what we believe is required in the Web3 space during our interactions. And the three words that kept coming up when we were talking to our community and discussing it on our team was respect, dignity, and understanding. And they were really the key sort of 3 points that we thought were important in sort of how to treat other people. So I've highlighted three sort of key elements within that principle. First one just being around general behaviour guidelines. So it's really around not interacting in bullying or any form of discrimination. And the way I like to explain this in a bit more detail, I'm not sure if it's a common term in America, but in the UK, when we're sort of messing around with friends or going back and forth, we call it banter. So there's the difference between banter and bullying. When you're in a comfortable scenario with your friends, you might take the mick out of each other, or go back and forth with, family members and things like that, which we'd consider friendly banter. But if you said the same thing or some of the things you say to your close friends to, say, a work colleague or in an environment where there's a lot of people around, it might make someone feel uncomfortable, and then it gets sort of closer to the side of bullying or being unreasonable. So the key thing to remember is that the important element is what the person who's receiving what you're saying is considers unreasonable, and it highlights the importance of considering other people's situations. So I'm sure we're all on Twitter and or X as it is now, and we sort of put statements out there and don't always consider what other people might think of what we're saying. So it's just about being, understanding, what one person considers unreasonable or reasonable might not be the same as the other person. And then I've put highlighted community collaboration here. And this was a key point that was identified during our Spaces session when we were talking about this topic with our community. And it came from the fact that the first thing the majority of people see when they enter the space is all the pump and dumpers and influencers, which aren't people that are necessarily demonstrating professionalism and ethics. So when people come in our space, that sometimes that's the first thing they see, and then that's kind of the lasting impression that they have on our space. So I think it's really important for the community to come together and really guide people to the proper projects and communities, making sure that they find them first so that they're not put off. So this demonstrates the importance of sort of community collaboration and sustainable ecosystems. That kind of comes into the same, it kind of links with the community element. And it's all about building a space that continues to uphold ethical and responsible environment. So building communities like Surgence is doing, and really working together to build a better place and a respectful one as well. So that's really that main principle. I'll go on to the next one, which is around conflicts of interest. And I mentioned this a second ago. I think it's a really key element and something I think is particularly present in the Web3 and especially the NFT space. And there's two key types of conflicts that we've sort of identified. One being a personal conflict, when your interests are conflicted due to a personal interest. So you might hold an NFT, and if you're advising other people to buy that NFT, then obviously there's a conflict there. So it's important to identify that. And the second one being professional conflicts, where you're perhaps advising two people competing at business. So, for example, you might be a solicitor advising a project on a marketing deal, and you would not want to be advising this business that marketing is being sold to. So you have to have. So yeah, that would be a clear sort of conflict acting on the same deal for two different parties. So the important thing we need to understand is how to identify conflicts of interest and what we should do if we have them. So I think everyone here has probably got potential conflicts of interest, being that the NFTs that you hold. So we just need to be careful when we're talking or promoting about what we, the assets that we hold in the Web3 space. So this is where transparency plays a key part. So we all want communities to do well. I'm sure that we've all shared and promoted projects that we've been involved with and on Twitter. And it only really becomes an issue if you're not being transparent with your clients or your audience. So, for example, if you make clear to your audience that you hold a certain NFT that you're promoting, then it ensures that they have the full facts and are able to make proper consideration in what they do with that information that you're giving them. So it's just really about declaring sort of what you hold and what your interests are. So I would always say that if there's a potential for a conflict of interest, or if you think that there might be a conflict of interest, there probably is. So it's probably not best to sort of advise on a topic that you think you might have a conflict in, or if it is something you continue to advise on, just make sure that there's procedures in place to ensure that conflict is not impacting sort of the advice that you're giving or the judgment of that person you're giving it to. So that's conflicts of interest, a really important one, I think, that we need to consider sort of in our space. The next ones we go on to abiding by applicable laws. So it's not always a popular one in Web3 because all the sort of ethos around decentralization. But I think if we're going to be a professional space, then we really need to sort of abide by the laws. And I think it's not necessarily whether we believe that those laws or regulations are correct. It's just about ensuring that we, follow what there is in place. So we obviously we need to follow the laws, but I think the issue in Web3 is that we're so early that there's not necessarily much case law to make legal judgments. So there's not a lot for legal advisors out there, and they're doing their best to advise their clients on what they think is reasonable and what is legal. But it doesn't really help when the regulators or people setting that law don't really necessarily have a proper idea themselves all the time. So sometimes it can be obvious, but it is a subject which relates if it's a subject that relates just to Web3, and we're the first ones going through it, it can be harder to determine what is and isn't sort of the legal process of doing something. We are starting to see some case law come through. I know Yuga Labs went through it recently with their case. So hopefully as we get further into the process, it will be easier to sort of know what we should and shouldn't be doing. But I think it's key for us to sort of discuss utilising Web3 to improve the way we abide by the laws. So I've put things here basically innovating and using the blockchain to improve what we do in the Web3 space and abiding by laws. So that might be having signatures on chain or having contracts that you sign on chain. So I think that's all to come and hopefully makes it a lot easier for us. But at the moment, it's just important to ensure we're using things like disclaimers, having terms of conduct, and ensuring that there's clear instructions and scope of works when we're doing work. And things like that. So yeah, not an easy one to do at the moment because it's not necessarily clear, but I think over time this one will become a lot easier to do. So yeah, if we go on to the next slide, where I've talked about our fourth principle at APDA, and that's maintaining the higher standards in integrity and honesty and consistency. So the sort of first point I made here is that the intent is always important, and it's important to be honest in everything that we do. Intent is a lot of the sort of points around that. So we see this in business and projects which have failed. So we've seen a lot of projects in the Web3 space that might not necessarily have intended to to rug or anything like that, but they've had inexperienced founders, and they found themselves with a huge community and money behind them, but without the experience to actually do it. And although they might not necessarily have intended to for it to fall down or fall apart or anything like that, it doesn't make sort of what they do correct. So it's just about having the right intent when you're sort of in what you're doing, really, and just being honest and consistent with how you act. So yeah, obviously best not to get yourself into that situation, and just be honest about your experience. And if you don't know certain elements of a project, then it's all about using the community and people around you to avoid that. And then I've just highlighted scams and risks at the bottom. And a lot of the time we seem to sort of, I feel like the Web3 space sort of justifies the scammer, and they say, the victim should have done their own research or whatever it might be. And I think it's important to ensure that we're educating each other. And it comes back to the point that we had before, where we really need to ensure that people that are joining this space find the right communities to join. So yeah, I think the onus needs to be more on the scammer rather than the person, clicking the wrong link and being silly and doing that sort of thing. So I think that's an important element there as well. And then the final principle that I've put in, which should be the next slide, is all around the culture of Web3. So yeah, this is another principle that changed following the community engagement, and that had been all about embracing the culture that the Web3 space has been built on. But when we were discussing it in our Twitter spaces, we found that although there's a lot of good in the culture and different cultures of Web3, there are some elements that are still quite bad, and elements of scamming and things like that. So that this is all about sort of trying to improve the culture and making it a better space going forward. So I think for it to be a professional, considered like a professional and ethical space, we really need to like embrace professionalism in the culture. So we need to emphasize the importance to grow and ensure that it becomes a respectful environment. And that's what I had on the last one, really. So that kind of brings me to an end. I think on the last slide I've just got our contact details if you want to find out a bit more about us. But yeah, the way we're sort of trying to improve the space is really just having these standards that we're trying to put in place in terms of our key principles. So we're hoping to publish our latest copy of our code of conduct, which goes into a lot more detail on these 5 principles about sort of the behaviours that we think people need to show to really ensure that we're improving the space. More than happy to share that with the Surgence community when we've got that, just to sort of get your feedback and see if there's anything we've missed or anything that perhaps you think needs to be emphasised a bit more in there. So more than happy to share that when we've got that. But yeah, hoping to issue those in the next week or so. So that'd be good. Good to do. But yeah, that's really it, Maya.
Thank you so much. That's really refreshing, and I actually can't wait to see future cases and laws about the space. And I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I was saying, at the moment we don't really have much to go on, and a lot of the people that are trying to advise from a legal point of view are kind of basing it on, Web2 case law or what they think is reasonable. But really, there's no really sort of guidance, and especially like in places like America where there seems to be pushing away crypto rather than sort of embracing it. It's not always easy. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
as we develop, it should hopefully get easier to understand what's right and wrong, shouldn't it?
I remembered reading a case. It was back in a bull when a project rogged somewhere. Like the founders were from America, and I remembered one of the founders were called, I don't know, Vinuin or something. It was really funny. I was reading the case, and they were trying to explain what MetaMask was and how it worked, and it was just like so basic and interesting, and like, oh my god, no way they don't know what it means. And I'm like, yeah, but yeah, it's super interesting. Can't wait to hear about that more.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone from the audience, I can't see how many people we've got here, but yeah, if anyone wanted to come up and yeah, give their thoughts on what they maybe there's a key point that I one of the topics that we spoke about, or if there's potentially anything we've sort of not included that you think is really important to be a professional sort of in our space. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think Surgence is really leading the way, in a lot of it and what I've seen you guys doing. So yeah,
Mm.
props off to you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like we had it was really funny because um I'll give you an example. Like Yusuf, he's like a 16-year-old. Like when he first joined Surgeons, he was like a 16, 17-year-old little boy who often was like really rude in a way, but in a funny way. Like that was his personality, and I think we had to like speak to him and like, hey, this is not how you kind of respond or talk to people in the space. And I think he kind of got the gist of it overall. And like after months, he became so professional on what he's doing. Even he's like building his personal brand, and the way he speaks to people has changed. And I hope like people
Mm.
who come to Surgeons kind of they would understand our mission and vision and what we're trying to do here, becoming a very professional type of people. And I think their like persona kind of changed from back in a bull, because back then it's like, oh yeah, no one knows who you are. You're covered by your PFP. You can act however you want. But I think eventually we kind of learned that this is not the way we should act towards people.
Mm.
And yeah, I think Surgeons is a great example of this professional hub that we're trying to build. Like,
Yeah, definitely. I think
even
we're seeing a lot more of it in the bear as well. Because I feel like the people that were here just to make money and mess around, they were here in the ball, but they're not really interested in like building the community or building products, with Web3. So I think at the moment there's so many more groups, and majority of people that are here for the right reasons. So I think it's a really good time to really set the standards of like what it is to be someone building in this space and sort of the principles that they should be following. And then when people come to join, when all the people get excited in the ball, there's kind of that standard that we've already set, rather than before it was more like a bit of a Wild West, wasn't it? Where everyone was
yeah,
coming in and there was no really proper way to act and things like that. So yeah, hopefully it's a good opportunity to do that.
yeah, yeah. If anyone has any questions, feel free to um, put in the chat or speak up. But I think that was an amazing presentation.
Yeah, so it's not always the most like exciting topic, sort of talking about this sort of stuff, and particularly, I'm no expert in law and things like that, but I think people, yeah, there's kind of I think some people have the impression that because we're in the space, we can just, the law doesn't apply to us. But I think if we want to do it seriously, we need to do those sort of things properly. So. I think it's important to have these standards. But yeah,
Yeah,
if anyone's interested in knowing more, then yeah, I've got our Twitter or X down there. So yeah, follow us on our page, and we've got a Discord open. Yeah, a lot of things hopefully coming out in the next few weeks in terms of our induction, and hopefully becoming a member later in the year, so you have the opportunity to really demonstrate your professionalism on chain. That's what we really want to do. So, and I'm sure there's going to be things that we can do with Surgence to make sure that you get the opportunity first, you guys. So, and your community. So yeah, stay tuned. Join us on Twitter and in our Discord. And when it comes to the point where we're starting to onboard members and allowing people to, make the most of being an APDA member, then I'm pretty confident that Surgence is going to be one of the communities we come to give you first opportunity. So yeah.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, it's real. It's banter. There's a lot of banter happening in Surgence as well. But yeah, I think you're always around in Surgence as well. So if you guys have any questions for him, just ping him away. But yeah, would love to chat with you about that. Yeah, Super Crunch wants to open his mic. Yes, Super Crunch, hello.
Oh, hello there. I'm sorry, I was eating earlier and like I missed some of the parts, but yeah, considering those ethics that you have presented, how did you execute those like carefully and like consistently towards what you were working for or what you were building for in the space?
Sorry, can you? I missed. My connection went a bit when you started your question. Can you say that
Yeah,
again?
sorry, sorry. So yeah, considering that you have presented those like professional ethics that you have like presented earlier, like how it helped you build in the space, considering it, how it helped you and how consistent does it apply to you daily upon like working or being here in the Web3?
Yeah, it's something that you kind of have to embrace and do all the time. Really, I'd say it's something that you really need to get in habits of doing because um, it's so even if you do it, let's say you're a professional, or acting professional, and following all these standards like for months in a row, and then suddenly you have a day where actually I'm gonna do something wrong, then it only takes one time to do it wrong to sort of damage your image in terms of professionalism. And that's what people remember. So I think is a lot of it's about being consistent and just try and get into good habits and making sure you're doing the right thing. So I think sometimes it's hard. An example of when you might retweet one of your favorite projects that you're in, and you probably hold some of those NFTs. And that when I was talking about conflicts of interest, that's quite a hard one because you might be considered that you're trying to pump your own bags and things like that. So on that, I'm hoping that as time goes by, that it'd be easy to like declare your conflicts of interest, and that's hopefully something that we're gonna work towards on a side of just making it clear to your audience, if you're an influencer or something like that, what NFTs you hold and what like interests you've got, so that it's really clear to everyone. So I think as time develops, it's going to be easier and easier to make sure you're practicing what we're preaching, kind of thing. At the moment, yeah, it is difficult, and I think it's just like trying to be honest and transparent, really, in what you're doing. And if there's something you're unsure of, or if there's something, none of us are experts in everything, so it's just making sure you're transparent, really, I would say.
Yeah, I
On
kind of like yeah. I kind of like agree with it because like most of the time I will tweet about projects. I consider how it like affects all of me and like how I influence it because like if I am holding it or feeling I'm working on it, I really need to show it hard because like I want people to know it and maybe sometimes show it to people to get on board with it. And yeah, it is just like a matter of how you put some influence towards the one that you are putting ethics to. And yeah, considering how you put those ethics and like maybe if you stumble upon like not working on an ethic that you will like put into yourself, or maybe like you failed to do the ethic that you are following, what like concepts or things that you do to make it like more good or maybe efficient.
So things that I do in practice to sort of demonstrate that I am sort of being ethical. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard question, really, but it's definitely something to think about. But yeah, I'll probably take that back and come back to the Surgence Discord on sort of really practical things to show.
On the topic of conflict of interest, this is a really hot take question, and feel free for the community to jump onto it. In the Web2, conflict of interest is probably like working with one company, right? But when you're in a Web3 space, you can work with multiple projects. How do you feel about people representing multiple projects? Is there a conflict of interest there?
I think, yeah, potentially. I think it probably depends on what those projects and businesses are doing. If they were both like competing against each other, or on the same sort of bit of business, then yeah, I think that definitely would be. But if you're advising one project that's completely separate to another, then you're less likely to see that. And what we're hoping to develop at APDA is like a decision tree. So it'll be like it's kind of like a flow diagram that says, kind of asks you different questions, and it's like a yes and a no. And if you say yes, it leads you to another one. And I'm hoping that's going to help people sort of really stop and think about what they're doing, and consider if there is a conflict in what they're doing. But I think if there's potential for the two businesses to either be competing against each other, or competing for the same business, like they might both be applying for the same developer to build on their project or something like that, then there's a conflict there if you're advising both of them, or maybe the developer and things like that. So it can be quite tricky, but I'm hoping we can bring out like a flow diagram that really helps ask simple questions so that you can stop and think. And then what I always say is, if you think there might be a conflict of interest, there probably is, or people might perceive that there is. So there are ways to, if you're like in business, if your business was in a conflict of interest, then there's ways that you can have like a term used to be something that you can't really say anymore. Information barriers, I think they call it now. It used to be called something else, but they've changed. But that's basically just ensuring that the two people within your company aren't talking to each other. But I don't think it ever works properly when you have like information barriers. It used to be called Chinese walls, but I think the term now is information barriers. So if you look that up, there's kind of techniques to stop you speaking to someone in your business or company that might be acting on to someone on the other side. There's techniques like that you can put in place. But I always think if you think there might be one, then it's better just not to advise on it.
Yeah, and it's always best to speak to obviously the founders that you're currently working with and say like, hey, this project's offering me a job. Is there a conflict of interest? Ask them a question. It's a simple question. It's a simple discussion that you should have, rather than like going behind your first project's back, I guess. But yeah, always
Yeah,
communicating with them, letting them know.
yeah. I think that's a really good point. And if you've got approval from both sides that they're both happy, then at least you've had that conversation, haven't you? And
Yeah, and it
you
shows
can't be.
who you are as a person with your ethics as well. Like,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
yeah, that was amazing. Thank you for the discussion. Does anyone else have any questions for Jana tonight or today? Wherever you guys are. We definitely should open a discussion forum. I think this is like something that it's like an ongoing topic of discussion, especially when it's
Yeah,
something
yeah.
new.
And then people might have we could probably put some practical examples in there, couldn't we, of situations that people have been in, and then just trying to understand what the right way should be. And I'm happy to sort of share our code of conduct when that gets put out, because that'll hopefully, more than anything, just give something for people to think about. And we're hoping to sort of issue it to the whole community and just say, look, this is the standard we should all be working to, and it gives like examples of different behaviours and things like that. So hopefully that'll be useful. It's just something we want to share the whole community, and hopefully it gets adopted by everyone.
Yeah. I think that is all for today. Thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us. If anyone has any questions, I'm gonna drop with the recordings. And you guys can pop your questions there. Other than that, I think that is all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks everyone for turning up too. Cheers.
Yeah, great attendance. Thanks, guys. You guys all get drops for attending. All right, see you guys.
No, no, no.
Okay, bye-bye. Wrap it up now.